Before we dive into this powerful story, if you're new here, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Each week we share real stories that touch the heart and remind us of our shared humanity. Now, let's begin a journey that might just change how you see the power of words. The morning Emma disappeared started like any other Tuesday in April. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds as Sarah Jackson stirred pancake batter, glancing occasionally at the clock on the microwave. 7:15 a.m. Emma was usually at the breakfast table by now, hair still messy from sleep, asking for extra syrup with that gap-toothed smile that melted Sarah's heart every time. "Emma!" Sarah called up the stairs. "Breakfast in 5!" No answer came from the 10-year-old's bedroom. Sarah wiped her hands on a dish towel and headed upstairs, the wooden steps creaking beneath her feet. She'd been up since 5, finishing a project proposal for work, and had barely seen her daughter that morning, except for the quick kiss on the forehead she'd given her before Emma rolled over in bed, mumbling something about 5 more minutes. The door to Emma's room was slightly ajar. Sarah pushed it open, expecting to find her daughter still buried under the purple comforter she'd insisted on buying during their last Target run. "Rise and shine, sleepyhead," Sarah said cheerfully. "We've got blueberry." The words died in her throat. Emma's bed was empty, the covers thrown back carelessly. Her unicorn slippers, the ones she never went anywhere without, sat neatly by the bed. "Emma?" Sarah called, a slight tremor in her voice. She checked the bathroom. Empty. The guest room empty. The playroom downstairs empty. By 7:30 a.m., the pancakes were cold, forgotten on the kitchen counter, and Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips as she dialed 911. "My daughter is missing," she told the dispatcher, her voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "She's 10 years old. Brown hair, brown eyes. She was in her bed when I checked on her at 5 a.m., and now she's gone." The next hours blurred together in a haze of police questions, phone calls, and growing dread. Officers searched the house, the yard, the neighborhood. Sarah called Emma's friends, her teachers, relatives, anyone who might have seen her. Nothing. By afternoon, the police had set up a command center in Sarah's living room. Detective Lisa Morales, a woman with kind eyes and a stern mouth, sat across from Sarah at the dining table. "I need to ask you some difficult questions, Ms. Jackson," Detective Morales said gently. "Is Emma's father involved in her life?" Sarah shook her head. "He moved to Seattle 3 years ago, calls on birthdays, sends Christmas gifts. That's about it. Any custody disputes? Recent arguments?" "No, nothing like that." The questions continued, each one driving the knife deeper into Sarah's heart. Had Emma seemed upset recently? Did she have access to the internet? Any unusual friends or adults showing interest in her? Were there any unlocked doors or windows? With each shake of her head, each no that passed her lips, Sarah felt the world around her drain of color, as if someone had turned down the saturation on her life. "We're doing everything we can," Detective Morales assured her, but Sarah barely heard her. She was staring at the refrigerator, at Emma's latest art project, a family portrait where she'd drawn herself and Sarah holding hands under a smiling sun. The date in the corner read, April 3, just 1 week ago. Night fell. Friends and neighbors filled the house, making coffee, answering phones, organizing search parties. Sarah moved through it all like a ghost, clutching her phone, jumping every time it buzzed, only to collapse back into despair when it wasn't news about Emma. It was during one of these moments, sitting alone in the kitchen while voices murmured in the living room, that Sarah looked up to see her standing in the doorway. Vanessa Mitchell, her next-door neighbor for the past 5 years. The woman who had brought casseroles when Sarah was sick, who had watched Emma occasionally when Sarah had late meetings. The woman Sarah had considered a friend. "Any news?" Vanessa asked, her voice flat. Sarah shook her head, tears threatening again. "Nothing. They're expanding the search area tomorrow, but..." She couldn't finish the sentence. couldn't voice the fear that was growing with each passing hour. She expected Vanessa to offer comfort, maybe a hug or at least a sympathetic word. Instead, something cold flickered across the woman's face. "Well," Vanessa said, crossing her arms, "I'm sure she'll turn up. Kids do this kind of thing for attention sometimes." Sarah stared at her, disbelief washing over her. "What?" "I'm just saying," Vanessa continued, her tone almost dismissive. "Single moms work a lot. Kids feel neglected. They act out." The implication hung in the air between them, that somehow this was Sarah's fault, that her daughter had run away because Sarah wasn't good enough, present enough, loving enough. Sarah felt as if she'd been slapped. "Emma wouldn't just run away," she said, her voice breaking. "Someone took her. Something happened to her." And then, in a moment Sarah would replay in her mind for days to come, Vanessa's lips curled into a smirk. A small, dry laugh escaped her. "Right," she said, "because it couldn't possibly be that she just got tired of—" She didn't finish her sentence, but she didn't need to. The damage was done. In that single moment, with that cold laugh, Vanessa had taken Sarah's worst nightmare and turned it into a judgment, a mockery. Something shifted inside Sarah then, a tectonic plate moving deep beneath the surface of her grief. She stood up slowly, her eyes never leaving Vanessa's face. "Get out of my house," she said quietly. Vanessa's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Sarah, I was just—" "Get out!" After Vanessa left, Sarah sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and the remnants of food no one had really eaten. The house hummed with worried voices and phone calls, but all Sarah could hear was that laugh. All she could feel was the cold blade of betrayal twisting alongside her fear. In that moment, Sarah made a promise to herself and to Emma, wherever she was. She would find her daughter, and someday, somehow, she would make Vanessa Mitchell understand exactly what she had done. The days that followed Emma's disappearance felt like drowning in slow motion. Sarah moved through them with the mechanical precision of someone who had forgotten how to live but didn't know how to stop. She took leaves from work, distributed flyers, gave interviews to local news stations, and checked in with Detective Morales twice daily. Each night, she returned to an empty house that echoed with absence. She would sit on Emma's bed, holding the stuffed elephant her daughter had slept with since she was 3, and try to keep the darkest thoughts at bay. 1 week after Emma disappeared, Sarah found herself standing in her daughter's room, staring at the bulletin board covered with photos, movie ticket stubs, and friendship bracelets. Her eyes landed on a picture taken last summer at the lake. Emma mid-jump off the dock, her arms spread wide, face split with laughter, fearless and free. The memory hit Sarah with such force that she had to sit down. She could almost feel Emma's damp hair against her shoulder as they drove home that day, smell the sunscreen and lake water, hear her daughter's voice chattering about the fish she'd seen. "I love you, Mom," Emma had said suddenly during a lull in the conversation. Like more than ice cream and puppies combined, Sarah had laughed, reaching over to squeeze her daughter's knee. "I love you too, sweet pea, more than all the stars in the sky." It was their thing, trying to outdo each other with declarations of love. Emma usually won, her comparisons becoming increasingly absurd and giggle-inducing. Sitting in the silent bedroom now, Sarah whispered, "I love you more than life itself, Emma. Please come home." The next morning, Sarah was in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. She rushed to answer it, heart leaping with hope, as it did every time the phone rang or someone came to the door. But it wasn't news about Emma. It was Vanessa, standing on the porch with a casserole dish in her hands and a practiced look of concern on her face. "I brought lasagna," she said, holding out the dish. "I thought you might not be eating properly." Sarah stared at her, speechless. Part of her wanted to slam the door, but another part, the part still desperate for any connection, any normalcy, stepped aside to let Vanessa in. They moved to the kitchen, where Vanessa set down the dish and began chatting as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't laughed at Sarah's pain just days ago. "The police were asking questions at my house yesterday," Vanessa said, leaning against the counter. "Checking all the neighbors again, I suppose. They asked if I'd noticed anything unusual that night." Sarah looked up. "And had you?" Vanessa shrugged. "Just the usual. Your lights were on late. I assumed you were working again." There it was again, that slight emphasis on again, the subtle judgment that Sarah had somehow neglected her daughter in favor of work. "I was finishing a proposal," Sarah said quietly. "Emma was asleep. I checked on her." "Of course you did," Vanessa said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then, almost casually, she added, "You know, my sister's boy went through a phase where he'd sneak out at night. Gave everyone quite a scare before they figured it out." Sarah felt her hands begin to shake. "Emma didn't sneak out." "How can you be sure? Kids keep secrets, Sarah, especially from busy parents who—" "Stop," Sarah interrupted, her voice low. "Just stop." Vanessa's expression hardened. "I'm only trying to help you consider all possibilities. It's not healthy to assume the worst has happened when the worst has happened." Sarah's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "My daughter is gone. She's been gone for 8 days, and you stand there suggesting it's my fault." "That's not what I said," Vanessa replied coldly. "But if you're going to be irrational—" "Irrational?" Sarah repeated, disbelief washing over her. "My child is missing, and you think my fear is irrational." Something ugly flashed across Vanessa's face then, something that looked almost like satisfaction. And then, just as before, she let out a short, dismissive laugh. "You always were dramatic, Sarah. Maybe that's where Emma gets it from." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. She stared at the woman she had once trusted, seeing for the first time the cruel stranger beneath the neighborly facade. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah whispered. "Why are you being so cruel?" Vanessa straightened, smoothing her perfectly pressed blouse. "I'm being realistic. Something you've clearly lost the capacity for." She turned to leave, pausing at the kitchen doorway. "Let me know when you're ready to accept that your perfect little family might not have been so perfect after all." After Vanessa left, Sarah sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the untouched lasagna growing cold beside her. The cruelty of Vanessa's words echoed in her mind, mixing with her fear for Emma until she felt almost dizzy with emotion. Why would someone she had considered a friend treat her this way during the worst moment of her life? What had she ever done to deserve such coldness? As darkness fell, Sarah moved through the empty house, turning on lights against the growing shadows. In Emma's room, she straightened the already neat bedspread, adjusted the pillows, and sat down at the small desk where her daughter did homework and wrote in her journal. The journal. Sarah's eyes fell on Emma's desk drawer, where she kept her private thoughts. Sarah had always respected her daughter's privacy, had never read the pink notebook with the silver lock, even though Emma had left the tiny key in plain sight on her bookshelf. Tonight, though, Sarah pulled open the drawer and reached for the journal. If there was any clue to where Emma might have gone, any secret she'd been keeping, it might be in these pages. With trembling fingers, Sarah unlocked the journal and began to read. Emma's journal entries were exactly what you might expect from a 10-year-old girl. She wrote about school projects, friendship dramas, and her ongoing campaign to convince Sarah they needed a dog. Nothing suggested she was unhappy or planning to run away, until Sarah reached an entry dated just 2 weeks before Emma disappeared. April 2nd. Mrs. Mitchell was weird today. She asked me lots of questions about Mom when I was waiting for the bus, like if Mom had a boyfriend or if men ever came to our house. I told her no, just us girls, and she made a face like she ate something sour. Then she said Mom must be lonely, and that's why she works so much. I don't think Mom's lonely. We have lots of fun together. But Mrs. Mitchell made me feel bad, like maybe Mom is sad and I don't notice. Should I ask her? Sarah's blood ran cold. She flipped the page. April 5th, Mrs. Mitchell gave me cookies after school today. She said I could come over any time if Mom was working late. She asked if Mom ever leaves me alone at night. I said no way. Mom always gets a sitter if she has to go out at night, usually Jessica from next door. Mrs. Mitchell said that was good, but she seemed disappointed. Weird. And then, the final entry, dated the day before Emma disappeared. April 11th. Mrs. Mitchell said something really strange today. She said she saw a man coming out of our house early in the morning last week. I told her that's impossible because it's just me and Mom. She said maybe there are things Mom doesn't tell me. She said sometimes moms have secret lives. I got mad and told her my mom doesn't keep secrets from me. I don't want to talk to Mrs. Mitchell anymore. She's being mean about Mom, and I don't like it. Sarah closed the journal, her mind racing. Vanessa had been questioning Emma about her, planting seeds of doubt in her daughter's mind. But why? What possible reason could she have? And then another, more terrifying thought hit her. What if Vanessa knew something about Emma's disappearance? What if her cruelty wasn't just casual meanness, but something more sinister? Sarah reached for her phone, ready to call Detective Morales, when it rang in her hand. Unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, her voice tight with hope and fear. "Ms. Jackson, this is Detective Morales. We've found something. Can you come to the station right away?" Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. "Is it Emma? Have you found her?" "Not yet," the detective said carefully, "but we've received some information that might help us locate her. I'd rather discuss it in person." 30 minutes later, Sarah sat across from Detective Morales in a small conference room at the police station. On the table between them lay a plastic evidence bag containing a child's hair ribbon, purple with silver stars, Emma's favorite. "Where did you find this?" Sarah whispered, fighting the urge to reach for it. "It was turned in anonymously," Detective Morales explained. "Left in an envelope at the front desk. There was a note saying it was found at Lakeside Park, near the boat launch." Lakeside Park was 15 miles from their home, in the opposite direction from Emma's school. Sarah had taken Emma there many times in the summer, but they hadn't visited since last August. "We're searching the area now," the detective continued. "But I wanted to ask, does Emma have any connection to anyone who lives near there? Any friends or relatives?" Sarah shook her head, then stopped. "Wait. Vanessa, my neighbor. She has a lake house somewhere in that area. She invited us there once last summer, but we couldn't go." Detective Morales made a note. "Vanessa Mitchell. We interviewed her as part of our canvass of your neighborhood. She's been acting strangely," Sarah said, the words tumbling out. "Saying cruel things, implying Emma ran away because I'm a bad mother." She hesitated, then added, "And I just found entries in Emma's journal. Vanessa was asking her questions about me, about whether men came to our house. She told Emma I might have secret lives." The detective's expression sharpened. "Do you have the journal with you?" Sarah nodded and reached into her bag, producing Emma's pink notebook. She watched as Detective Morales read the entries, her face giving nothing away. "This is concerning," she said finally. "I'm going to have another conversation with Ms. Mitchell. In the meantime, I want you to go home and try to rest. We'll keep you updated on the search at the lake." But Sarah couldn't rest. As soon as she got home, she went to her computer and searched for property records near Lakeside Park. It took over an hour, but she finally found it. A cabin registered to Mitchell V on the north shore of the lake. Sarah stared at the screen, her mind working furiously. She knew she should call Detective Morales, tell her what she'd found. The police would handle it. But what if they were too late? What if Emma was there right now, waiting for help? Before she could reconsider, Sarah grabbed her keys and headed for the door. She would just drive by, she told herself, just see if there was anything suspicious. She wouldn't approach the cabin alone. The drive to Lakeside Park took 25 minutes, each one stretching Sarah's nerves tighter. The cabin was set back from the road, down a gravel driveway lined with pine trees. Sarah parked her car on a service road about a quarter mile away and approached on foot. her heart pounding so loud she was sure it would give her away. The cabin looked deserted. No car in the driveway, no lights in the windows. Sarah crept closer, staying hidden among the trees. She was about to turn back, convinced she'd made a mistake, when she heard it, faint but unmistakable, a child's voice. Sarah froze, straining to listen. There it was again, someone talking inside the cabin. She couldn't make out the words, couldn't be sure it was Emma, but it was definitely a young girl's voice. Her hands shaking, Sarah pulled out her phone and called Detective Morales. "I'm at Vanessa Mitchell's cabin," she whispered when the detective answered. "I can hear a child inside. Please hurry." "Ms. Jackson, do not approach that cabin," Detective Morales said firmly. "We have officers in the area already. Give me the exact address and stay where you are." Sarah relayed the address, then added, "Please hurry, I think my daughter is in there. Units are on their way, 5 minutes out. Do not approach the cabin, Ms. Jackson. I repeat, do not." But Sarah had already hung up. 5 minutes was too long. She couldn't wait, not when Emma might be just yards away. Moving as quietly as she could, Sarah approached the cabin's back door. Through a small window, she could see into a dimly lit kitchen. Empty. She tried the door handle. Locked. She moved around to a side window, which looked into what appeared to be a small living room. And there, sitting on a sofa with her back to the window, was a small figure with brown hair. "Emma," Sarah breathed, her heart soaring with hope and fear. She was about to tap on the window when she heard car tires on gravel. Ducking down, she peered around the corner of the cabin and saw a familiar silver SUV pulling into the driveway. Vanessa had arrived. Sarah's first instinct was to run, to confront Vanessa, to demand her daughter back. But something held her in place, a voice of caution that whispered she needed to be smart, not just brave. She watched as Vanessa got out of her SUV, carrying grocery bags, and headed for the front door. The moment Vanessa was inside, Sarah crept back to the side window, desperate for another glimpse of the child she'd seen. The living room was empty now. Sarah's heart sank. Had she imagined it? Was her mind playing cruel tricks, showing her what she desperately wanted to see? She strained to hear voices from inside, but the cabin was too well insulated. Moving carefully around the perimeter, she tried each window, looking for any sign of Emma or the child she'd glimpsed. At the last window, which looked into a small bedroom, Sarah froze. There, sitting on the edge of a twin bed, was a girl with brown hair. But as the child turned slightly, Sarah realized with a crushing sense of disappointment that it wasn't Emma. This girl was older, 12 or 13 maybe, with darker hair and a narrower face. Who was she? And why was she here at Vanessa's cabin? Before Sarah could process this new information, she heard sirens in the distance. The police were coming. She retreated to the tree line, watching as 2 patrol cars pulled up behind Vanessa's SUV, lights flashing. What followed was a blur of activity. Officers approaching the cabin with hands on their weapons, Vanessa coming to the door, looking confused and then angry, the young girl appearing behind her, wide-eyed and frightened. Detective Morales arrived minutes later, quickly taking charge of the scene. Sarah watched from a distance as the detective spoke with Vanessa, whose gestures became increasingly agitated. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, an officer approached Sarah's hiding place. "Ms. Jackson, Detective Morales would like to speak with you." Sarah followed the officer back to the cabin, where Detective Morales waited on the front porch, her expression grave. "Ms. Jackson, this is not your daughter," she said quietly, gesturing toward the patrol car where the brown-haired girl now sat, wrapped in a blanket. "That's Lily Peterson. She's been reported missing from her father's custody in a divorce dispute. Her mother, Karen Peterson, is inside. Ms. Mitchell is her sister." Sarah stared at the detective, trying to make sense of her words. But the ribbon, Emma's ribbon that was found here. Detective Morales sighed. "We don't know about that yet. We're still questioning Ms. Mitchell and her sister." "Can I talk to them?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. Please, I need to know if they've seen Emma. After a moment's hesitation, the detective nodded. Briefly, but let me do the questioning. Inside the cabin, Vanessa and a woman who looked remarkably like her, presumably Karen Peterson, sat on the sofa, both wearing expressions of affronted dignity despite the circumstances. Ms. Mitchell, Ms. Peterson, Detective Morales began. This is Sarah Jackson, Emma's mother. She has reason to believe you might know something about her daughter's disappearance. Vanessa's eyes narrowed as she looked at Sarah. I've already told the officers I know nothing about Emma. I've been helping with the search, bringing food to the volunteers. Ask anyone. And yet, Detective Morales said coolly, we find you here, hiding a different missing child. You can understand our concern. This is completely different, Karen Peterson interjected. My ex-husband is abusive. I was protecting my daughter. By violating a court order and crossing state lines with her? The detective raised an eyebrow. That's for the courts to sort out. Right now, I'm more concerned about Emma Jackson. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Vanessa. Why have you been so cruel to me? She asked, her voice breaking. Making comments about my parenting, laughing at my pain. And why were you questioning Emma about me before she disappeared? Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that Sarah knew about her conversations with Emma. I don't know what you're talking about, she said stiffly. I've only tried to help. Emma wrote about it in her journal, Sarah pressed on. You told her I might have secret lives. You were trying to make her doubt me. Why? For a moment, Vanessa seemed at a loss for words. Then her sister touched her arm, a silent communication passing between them. Fine, Vanessa said finally, her voice cold. I was concerned about Emma. You work all the time, Sarah. That child practically raises herself. That's not true, Sarah whispered, stung. Isn't it? Late nights, early mornings. Always that laptop open, even on weekends. Emma would come to my house looking for company while you were locked in your home office. Each word was like a knife, precisely aimed at Sarah's deepest insecurities as a single mother. I was building a life for us, she said, fighting back tears. Working hard so Emma could have opportunities. She knew that. She understood. Did she? Vanessa asked, her voice softening into something almost like pity. Or did she just accept it because she had no choice? Detective Morales stepped between them. Ms. Mitchell, did you have anything to do with Emma Jackson's disappearance? Vanessa's expression hardened again. Absolutely not. I would never harm a child. But you would try to turn a child against her mother, Sarah said quietly. You would plant seeds of doubt in a 10-year-old's mind. I was trying to open her eyes, Vanessa snapped. Someone needed to show her that the perfect mother she idolized was actually... That's enough, Detective Morales interrupted. Ms. Mitchell, we'll continue this conversation at the station. Officers will escort you and your sister there now. As Vanessa and Karen were led away, Sarah remained in the cabin's living room, trying to process everything that had happened. The brown-haired girl wasn't Emma. The cabin hadn't yielded any real clues to her daughter's whereabouts. And yet, something had shifted. She now understood the source of Vanessa's cruelty, jealousy perhaps, or some twisted sense of justice on behalf of Emma, but none of it brought her closer to finding her daughter. Ms. Jackson, Detective Morales said gently, returning to the living room, we're going to keep investigating Ms. Mitchell and her sister. If they know anything about Emma, we'll find out. Sarah nodded numbly. What about the ribbon? Emma's ribbon that was found here? The detective hesitated. We haven't located it in the cabin yet, but we'll keep searching. You think I imagined it? That there never was a ribbon? I think, Detective Morales said carefully, that grief can make us see connections that aren't there. We received an anonymous tip about this location, and you found property records linking it to Ms. Mitchell. That's good detective work. But the ribbon, we just don't know yet. Sarah felt hollowness expanding inside her chest. Had she been chasing shadows? Was Emma still out there somewhere, waiting to be found, while Sarah wasted precious time on a wild goose chase? "I need to go home," she said suddenly, in case Emma comes back." Detective Morales nodded. "I'll have an officer drive you. We'll call as soon as we have any news." The ride back to Sarah's house was silent, her mind too exhausted to form coherent thoughts. When they arrived, the officer walked her to the door, making sure she got inside safely before leaving. Alone again, Sarah moved through the quiet house like a ghost. She checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls. She looked at Emma's picture on the mantel, at the bright smile that had been absent from Sarah's life for 9 days now. "Where are you, sweet pea?" she whispered. "Please come home." Exhausted beyond measure, Sarah sank onto the sofa and closed her eyes just for a moment, just to rest. She didn't know how long she'd been asleep when the sound jolted her awake, a soft but distinct click from the front door. Sarah sat up, instantly alert, her heart racing. Had she imagined it? No, there it was again. The sound of the front door opening, followed by quiet footsteps in the entryway. "Hello?" Sarah called, her voice trembling. "Who's there?" The footsteps paused, then quickened. And then, like a miracle, like a dream she was afraid to believe, a small figure appeared in the doorway. "Mom! Emma!" Sarah whispered, afraid that if she spoke too loudly, the apparition might vanish. "Emma, is that really you?" The girl in the doorway, dirt-smudged face, tangled hair, wearing the same pajamas she'd disappeared in 9 days ago, nodded, her lower lip trembling. "I got lost, Mom," she said, her voice small and tired. "I tried to find my way back, but everything looked different in the dark." Sarah crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered her daughter into her arms, holding her so tightly that Emma squeaked in protest. She smelled of earth and pine needles and something else, fear perhaps or exhaustion, but she was here, she was alive. "I need to call Detective Morales," Sarah said, reluctantly loosening her hold on Emma, but keeping one hand firmly on her shoulder, as if afraid she might disappear again. "Everyone's been looking for you, sweet pea." Emma nodded, leaning against Sarah's side as she made the call. Within minutes, sirens announced the arrival of police cars and an ambulance. Detective Morales was first through the door, her professional demeanor cracking slightly at the sight of Emma safe in her mother's arms. The next hours were a whirlwind of questions, medical examinations, and tearful reunions, as friends and neighbors learned of Emma's return. Through it all, Sarah refused to leave her daughter's side, even when the doctors at the hospital insisted on examining Emma alone. "I'm not letting her out of my sight," Sarah told them firmly. "Not for 1 second." Finally, well past midnight, they were allowed to return home. Emma had been given a clean bill of health, dehydrated and exhausted, with various scrapes and bruises, but otherwise unharmed. Detective Morales had arranged for officers to remain outside their house overnight, both for protection and to keep away the reporters who had already begun to gather. In Emma's bedroom, Sarah helped her daughter into clean pajamas and tucked her into bed, just as she had done thousands of times before. But tonight, she climbed in beside Emma, unwilling to let even a few feet of distance separate them. "Can you tell me what happened, sweet pea?" Sarah asked gently, stroking Emma's freshly washed hair. "Where have you been all this time?" Emma sighed, snuggling closer. "I woke up in the middle of the night and saw lights outside my window, like flashlights but colored, red and blue and green. I thought maybe it was aliens." Despite everything, Sarah smiled at her daughter's imagination. "I went to the window to look," Emma continued, "but I couldn't see anything from my room. So I went downstairs and looked out the back door. The lights were coming from the woods behind our house. I thought it might be fairies." Sarah's smile faded. "So you went outside, in the middle of the night?" Emma nodded, her expression sheepish. "I know I'm not supposed to go out alone, especially at night, but it was so pretty, Mum. The lights were dancing between the trees, and I just wanted to see what they were." "What were they?" Sarah asked, though she had a sinking suspicion she knew the answer. Just some teenagers with flashlights and colored cellophane. They were making a video or something. They ran away when they saw me. But by then I was already deep in the woods and it was so dark. I tried to find my way back, but I got turned around. Emma's voice trembled. I walked for hours, trying to find our house. But I just got more lost. I found an old shed in the woods and stayed there during the day because I was scared. At night, I tried to find my way home again. Sarah held her daughter closer, imagining her alone and frightened in the vast stretch of woodland that backed onto their neighborhood. How did you survive out there for 9 days? There was a creek near the shed with clean water, and I found blackberry bushes. And Emma hesitated, looking up at Sarah with uncertainty. And what, sweet pea? And sometimes food would appear outside the shed, granola bars and apples and stuff. I think someone knew I was there, but was afraid to come close. Sarah frowned. Did you ever see this person? Emma shook her head. No, but once I found a note with the food that said, your mom is looking for you. That's how I knew you hadn't forgotten me. Oh, Emma, Sarah's voice broke. I would never, ever forget you. I've been searching every minute since you disappeared. Emma was quiet for a moment, her fingers playing with the edge of her blanket. Mrs. Mitchell said sometimes you wished you didn't have so many responsibilities, that sometimes having a kid made your life harder. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. When did she say that? A few weeks ago, when I was waiting for the bus and you were on a work call. She said you looked stressed and that being a single mom was probably really hard on you. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to control the anger that surged through her. Emma, look at me. Having you in my life is the greatest gift I've ever received. Yes, being a mom is hard sometimes, but it's the best kind of hard, the kind that makes you stronger and better. I have never, not for one single second, wished for a life without you in it. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I was scared you'd be mad at me for going outside. I'm not mad, Sarah assured her. I'm just so grateful you found your way back to me. They talked until Emma's eyelids grew heavy, her sentences becoming shorter, punctuated by yawns. Even after her daughter fell asleep, Sarah remained awake, watching the gentle rise and fall of Emma's chest, afraid that if she closed her eyes, she might wake to find it had all been a dream. Around dawn, Sarah carefully extracted herself from Emma's bed and tiptoed downstairs. She needed coffee, needed to call Detective Morales with the new information about the teenagers in the woods and the mysterious food provider who had helped keep Emma alive. As she waited for the coffee to brew, Sarah found herself thinking about Vanessa. The woman's cruelty made more sense now. She had been deliberately trying to undermine Emma's trust in her mother, planting seeds of doubt that could have had devastating consequences. The thought of confronting Vanessa again made Sarah's stomach churn. But something needed to be said, not just for Sarah's sake, but for Emma's, and perhaps for any other child Vanessa might try to manipulate in the future. Sarah reached for a notepad on the counter and began to write. 3 days later, Emma was well enough to return to school. The story of her misadventure in the woods had made local headlines, and the teenagers responsible for the lights had come forward, tearfully apologetic about inadvertently luring a child into danger. The identity of Emma's mysterious benefactor remained unknown, though Detective Morales had her suspicions about a reclusive veteran who lived in a cabin deep in the woods and was known to avoid contact with others. Vanessa and her sister Karen had been charged with custodial interference in relation to Lily Peterson, though no connection to Emma's disappearance had been established. They were currently out on bail, awaiting trial. Sarah had seen Vanessa only once since Emma's return. A glimpse of her neighbor checking her mail, her usual confident posture notably diminished. Vanessa had looked up, seen Sarah watching from across the street, and quickly retreated into her house. Now, on this bright morning, with Emma safely back at school, Sarah stood on Vanessa's porch, an envelope in her hand. She rang the doorbell and waited, her heart steady despite the significance of the moment. When Vanessa opened the door, surprise flickered across her face, followed quickly by wariness. "Sarah," she said stiffly, "I didn't expect to see you." "I won't take much of your time," Sarah replied, her voice calm. "I just wanted to give you this." She held out the envelope. Vanessa hesitated before taking it, her expression guarded. "What is it?" "A letter," Sarah said simply. "I'd appreciate if you'd read it." Without waiting for a response, Sarah turned and walked away, feeling lighter with each step. Whatever happened next, whether Vanessa read the letter or threw it away unread, Sarah had said what needed to be said. That evening, after Emma was tucked in bed, with promises of checking on her throughout the night, Sarah sat on her porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The past 2 weeks had changed her in ways she was still discovering, making her both stronger and more vulnerable, more fiercely protective, yet also more aware of the fragility of the life she had built. The sound of footsteps approaching drew her attention. Vanessa stood at the bottom of the porch steps, her face partially shadowed in the fading light. In her hand was the envelope Sarah had delivered earlier, now opened. "May I?" Vanessa asked, gesturing to the empty space on the swing. After a moment's hesitation, Sarah nodded. They sat in silence for several minutes, the gentle creaking of the swing the only sound between them. Finally, Vanessa spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your letter. I wasn't prepared for it." Sarah said nothing, watching as Vanessa struggled to find words. "I expected anger," Vanessa continued. "Accusations. I deserved them, but instead you wrote about pain. Your pain, Emma's pain, and," she faltered, then forced herself to continue, "and my pain. How did you know?" "I didn't," Sarah admitted. "Not for certain, but there had to be a reason for your cruelty, hatred that strong doesn't come from nowhere." Vanessa stared down at the letter in her hands, the pages illuminated by the porch light. "My daughter would have been 12 this year. She died when she was 8. Cancer." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the weight of this revelation. "I'm so sorry." "Her father left us during her treatment. Couldn't handle it," he said. "So it was just me, watching her slip away, working myself to the bone to pay for experimental treatments that didn't work." Vanessa's voice was flat, emotionless, as if she'd rehearsed this story many times. "When I saw you with Emma, a single mom like I was, but with a healthy, happy child, something inside me just broke. So you tried to break us," Sarah said softly, "to prove that no mother is perfect, that every child can be turned against their parent." Vanessa nodded, tears finally breaking through her composed facade. "I was helping Karen hide Lily from her ex-husband. I convinced myself I was protecting them, but I think part of me wanted to prove that children are better off without their fathers, that single mothers can be enough. And then seeing you struggle to balance work and motherhood, watching Emma wait at the bus stop alone because you had early meetings." She shook her head. "I twisted it all in my mind, made you into something you're not, made your relationship with Emma into something it's not." You could have helped," Sarah said, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from her voice. "Instead of judging, instead of trying to come between us, you could have offered real support." "I know," Vanessa whispered. "That's what your letter made me see. That my pain doesn't justify causing pain to others." She looked up at Sarah, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I'm going to get help. Therapy. I should have done it years ago after Sophia died." Sarah nodded, not quite ready to offer forgiveness, but acknowledging the step Vanessa was taking. "When Emma disappeared," Vanessa continued, her voice breaking, "and I saw what it did to you, how it destroyed you, I still couldn't stop. I kept thinking you deserved to feel what I felt, to know what it's like to lose a child." "No one deserves that," Sarah said quietly. "No one. I know that now." Vanessa stood, carefully folding the letter and placing it back in its envelope. "I won't bother you and Emma anymore. I'm selling the house, moving closer to my parents. After the trial, I mean. Sarah watched her walk down the steps, this woman who had caused so much pain, yet was clearly drowning in her own. At the sidewalk, Vanessa paused and turned back. "Your letter," she said hesitantly. "The way you described your love for Emma, how it transforms even the hardest days into gifts. It made me remember how I used to feel about Sophia before the bitterness took over. Thank you for that." As Vanessa disappeared into the gathering darkness, Sarah remained on the swing, thinking about the power of words, how they could wound and heal, divide and connect. The letter she had written hadn't been about forgiveness, not really. It had been about truth, about laying bare the reality of her love for Emma and the pain of nearly losing her. That Vanessa had seen herself reflected in those words, had found a way back to her own capacity for love. That was unexpected. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, connection remains possible. 1 month after Emma's return, life had settled into a new normal. Sarah had reduced her work hours, arranging with her boss to complete more projects from home. Emma had recovered from her ordeal with the resilience only children possess, though she still occasionally woke from nightmares about being lost in endless woods. The house next door stood empty, a sold sign in the front yard. Vanessa had moved away 2 weeks earlier after accepting a plea deal for her role in her niece's case. She and Sarah had not spoken again after that night on the porch, but Vanessa had left a small package in Sarah's mailbox before departing. A framed photograph of Emma at last year's school picnic, her smile wide and carefree, a moment captured before complications and fear had entered their lives. On this particular Saturday morning, Sarah and Emma sat at the kitchen table, working on a jigsaw puzzle while cinnamon rolls baked in the oven, filling the house with warmth and sweetness. "Mom," Emma said, fitting a piece into place with satisfaction, "can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweet pea." Emma hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of another puzzle piece. "What did you write in that letter to Mrs. Mitchell? The one that made her cry?" Sarah looked up, surprised. "How did you know about that?" "I saw her leaving our house that night," Emma admitted. "I was supposed to be asleep, but I got up for water and saw you two talking on the porch. Then when I went back to bed, I looked out my window and saw her crying as she walked home." Sarah considered her daughter's question carefully. "I wrote about us," she said finally. "About how much I love you and how scared I was when you were missing." But why would that make her cry?" "Sometimes," Sarah explained gently, "when people are hurting, they want others to hurt too. It makes them feel less alone in their pain. Mrs. Mitchell was hurting very badly because she lost her daughter a few years ago." Emma's eyes widened. "She had a daughter, but she died?" Sarah nodded. "Her name was Sophia, and losing her broke Mrs. Mitchell's heart in a way that never really healed." "No, so she was mean to you because she was sad about Sophia?" "It's more complicated than that," Sarah said. "But yes, in a way. Her pain made her see things unclearly, made her forget that causing pain to others doesn't make your own pain any less." Emma was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. "Did your letter remind her about Sophia?" "I think," Sarah said carefully, "my letter reminded her about love. About how loving someone, even when it's hard, even when you're afraid of losing them, is always worth it." Emma nodded, satisfied with this explanation, and returned her attention to the puzzle. But after a moment, she looked up again. "Mom, do you think Mrs. Mitchell ever told Sophia that she loved her more than ice cream and puppies combined?" Sarah smiled, her heart full. "I hope so, sweet pea. I really hope so." Later that day, as Emma played in the backyard under Sarah's watchful eye, the mail carrier delivered a small package. Inside was a journal, bound in soft leather, with Emma's initials embossed on the cover. A note accompanied it, "For new beginnings and happy endings. Some stories are too important not to be written down." It wasn't signed, but Sarah recognized Detective Morales' handwriting. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at her desk with her own journal open before her. She had started writing again after Emma's return, finding that putting her thoughts on paper helped process the lingering fear and gratitude that often overwhelmed her. Tonight, she wrote about the letter, the one that had somehow broken through Vanessa's ice, the one Emma had asked about. She hadn't kept a copy, had written it in one emotional sitting without stopping to consider each word, but she remembered its essence, its truth. Dear Vanessa, when my daughter disappeared, the world lost its colors. Hours passed like years, and silence became a physical presence in our home. In those endless days, I learned what true fear tastes like, metallic and cold, coating every thought, every breath. You could have helped me carry that fear. Instead, you mocked it. Your laughter in the face of my pain is something I will never fully understand, but I'm writing not to demand answers or explanations. I'm writing because I need you to know what that moment did to me. It changed me, Vanessa, not in the way you might have intended. It didn't break me or make me doubt myself as a mother. Instead, it clarified everything. In that moment of cruelty, I saw with perfect clarity what matters and what doesn't. What matters is the way Emma's hand feels in mine when we cross the street, the way her voice sounds when she reads aloud, stumbling over big words but pressing on with determination. The sticky kisses she plants on my cheek before bed, and the tangle of her hair on Sunday mornings when we make pancakes in our pajamas. What matters is that I get to witness her growing up, the privilege of seeing her become herself, day by day. The gift of being the person she runs to with scraped knees and hurt feelings and exciting news that can't wait. What doesn't matter is your judgment, your assumptions about my life, my choices, my relationship with my daughter. They're just noise. Background static that fades away when Emma laughs. I don't know why you tried to turn my daughter against me. I don't know why you planted seeds of doubt in a 10-year-old's mind, or why you laughed when my world was collapsing. Perhaps there's pain in your own life that drives you to create pain for others. If so, I'm sorry for whatever you've suffered. But pain isn't an excuse for cruelty. It's not a free pass to wound others because you yourself are wounded. We all carry burdens, Vanessa. The question is whether we use them to build walls or bridges. When Emma finally came home, she told me about the things you said to her, how you suggested I might wish for a life with fewer responsibilities, how you implied that being her mother was sometimes too hard for me. I want you to know that in all the years I've had Emma, through all the sleepless nights and tight budgets and logistical challenges of single parenthood, I have never once wished for a different life. Yes, being a mother is hard. It's terrifying and exhausting and sometimes thankless. But it's also the most profound joy I've ever known. Every difficulty is outweighed 1,000 times by the privilege of watching Emma grow, of being her safe harbor in a sometimes stormy world. I don't write this to change your mind or earn your approval. I write it because the truth deserves to be spoken, because Emma deserves a mother who stands up for their relationship, who defends the love between them. And perhaps because you deserve to know what you nearly destroyed. Not to make you feel guilty, but to show you what real love looks like. The kind that doesn't diminish others to feel important. The kind that builds up rather than tears down. In the end, Vanessa, your laughter didn't destroy me. It reminded me of my own strength, and for that, ironically, I thank you. Sarah closing her journal, Sarah moved to the window. Outside, the moon cast silver light over the yard where, just hours earlier, Emma had been playing safe, happy, home. In a few hours, the sun would rise on another day together, another opportunity to build memories and strengthen the bond that no one, not Vanessa, not fear, not even 9 days of separation, could break. Sarah thought about Vanessa, wondering if the letter had truly changed something in her, or if the tears had been merely a momentary crack in her armor. She hoped, for Vanessa's sake, that there had been healing, that somewhere in those words Vanessa had found a way back to the love she must have felt for Sophia, before grief hardened it into something unrecognizable. And she thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully down the hall, unaware of the profound impact her disappearance and return had had on so many lives. One day, when she was older, Sarah would tell her the whole story, not to burden her, but to show her the power of love and truth, the strength that comes from vulnerability, and the healing that can begin with words written from the heart. For now, though, Sarah was content to let Emma be a child, free from the weight of adult complexities. There would be time enough for those lessons later. Tonight, they were simply mother and daughter, their bond tested and proven unbreakable. Sarah smiled as she turned from the window. Tomorrow was another day to love, another chance to get it right. And in the end, that was all that really mattered. Before we wrap up this emotional journey, I want to thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this story about the power of words and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter, please hit the subscribe button and become part of our storytelling community. Your likes and comments mean the world to us and help us continue sharing stories that touch the heart. Until next time, remember that sometimes our strongest moments come when we think we're at our weakest.